Hello, you're listening to Environmental Soup through the facilities of Trent Radio. And I am also on YouTube. Today, with the news that there was war, I will discuss the environmental effects of war. There was war between Iran and Israel and the US as well as other countries. And the Canadian government is increasing military spending to reach 5% of GDP instead of under 2% that it was originally. Let's see, I will find the articles. This increase in spending means that there will be a greater increase in greenhouse gas emissions and other climate impacts, which I will discuss. And a lot of the emissions are not reported, so we do not know the full extent of the issues. There's an article that I would like to talk about or look at first. This is the climate cost of war, and militaries can no longer be ignored. And this is in The Guardian, and this is a 2024 opinion article. And it says that more than 5% of global emissions are linked to conflict or militaries. And a lot of it isn't reported. This article talks about the war in Ukraine as well. And it says that we could point to landscape fires, burning oil refineries, and diesel-hungry military vehicles, but there's no data. And with the war in Iran and other countries, in particular, there's burning oil refineries, so that has a direct impact on greenhouse gas emissions. And then the 1997 Kyoto Protocol has an exclusion, and it has voluntary reporting under the 2015 Paris Agreement. And only a handful of countries publish the minimum requirement of the United Nations reporting guidelines, and many countries do not publish anything. And it's saying that we can't decarbonize or reduce emissions without knowing the full extent of the emissions. So that's a look at the Article 1. Then there was the Climate Change Performance Index, a guest article Guest article, CCPI times military emissions cap, how military emissions impact global warming. And this looks like it's from the Conflict and Environmental Observatory. And it says Ali Kinney is an advocacy climate coordinator. And they launched the Military Emissions Gap in 2021, which tracks and analyzes military emissions data and advocates for accountability for the military's contribution to the climate crisis. And they're saying that 5.5% of global emissions comes from the military, which would be the fourth largest emitter in the world of greenhouse gases. And this does not take into account the armed conflicts. This article is in 2024. So in the case of Iran and Israel, the US, and other countries that are in a conflict because of an illegal war caused by the US and Israel. The war does not look at all the refineries that have been targeted on both sides of the conflict. This means that the 5.5% of greenhouse gas emissions is likely higher, and and then the article says that we cannot manage what they do not measure. And significant countries are significantly under reporting uncategorized military emissions. And India is given as an example. And there's no available data on 83.6 billion in India's budget. But it's the same in many countries. There's no data. We need that data to take credible climate action. So this is worth looking into. And we should write to a member of parliament and opposition leaders to demand that climate action be taken seriously in the military. And then this is an old article in Al Jazeera. It's an opinion article. COP30 cannot meet the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal while military emissions stay uncounted. And there's a huge gap between what the governments disclose and the scale of military pollution. And then it says only 5 countries follow the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change voluntary reporting guidelines for military emissions. And then there's 100 organizations that have signed the War on Climate Initiative's pledges. Oh, and this all. Oh, yeah. I said the name of the article. And this article was from 2025. There's also an article called Canada Still Doesn't Know How Much Pollution Its Military Emits. This one's older. It's in Vice. It's from 2017. And it's saying that Canada doesn't count greenhouse gas emissions for any overseas operations conducted by its military. And then there was 1,378 sorties conducted by CF-18 Hornets over Iraq and Syria for Operation Impact between 2014 and 2016. There was delivery of over 40 million pounds of fuel to the US-led coalition, which is over Iraq and Syria. And it's saying that the airstrikes allegedly killed 1,000 civilians. So it's important to remember that in war, those people have lost their lives as well. And then there's some countries, like such as Israel and other countries, have been using white phosphorus, and white phosphorus was used in Lebanon, and it's saying that it was used illegally over homes in southern Lebanese town on March 3rd, according to Human Rights Watch. And this is in Reuters. And the article is called Human Rights Watch says that Israel has been illegally using white phosphorus in Lebanon. And this is the report from Human Rights Watch. Lebanon, Israel unlawfully using white phosphorus. And this was published very recently in 2016. And they geolocated 8 images showing white phosphorus used over residential area. And they're saying that it can cause death or injuries that result in lifetime suffering. The chemical is dispersed in artillery shells, bombs, rockets, and ignites when exposed to oxygen, and can set homes, agricultural area, and civilian objects on fire. This will increase greenhouse gas emissions because of the fire. Human Rights did not verify whether people were in the area or injured as a result of the phosphorus use, but they previously documented the use of white phosphorus between October 2023 and May 2024. And then there was photographs of the Lebanese armed group Hezbollah. Those photographs from the Civil Defense Team of the Islamic Health Committee, which is affiliated with Hezbollah. extinguishing fires on residential roofs, and a call. And it was attributed to white phosphorus. And then white phosphorus, according to the World Health Organization, and says that it's difficult to extinguish, sticks to skin and clothing, it's harmful to humans by all routes of exposure, it's harmful to the eyes and respiratory tract, and it can cause severe burns, and there was an article from the International Union of Scientists talking about the military, and it's called the militarism, a leading cause of environmental and climate crisis. And this is from 2025. And it's saying that, repeating that the Kyoto Protocol excluded the military emissions, and the Paris Agreement in 2015 treated them as voluntary. And then they're saying that there's consumption of fossil fuels. And then it's saying that the US military alone has fired more than 337,000 bombs and missiles in the past 2 decades. And there's direct targeting of oil production, storage, or transportation infrastructure. And those fires release into the atmosphere. The 1991 Gulf War oil fires set in Kuwait by retreating Iraqi forces contributed to more than 2% of the global fossil fuel emissions that year. So it's likely that over 2% of emissions for 2026 will be attributed to the military. And then they were saying that even in peacetime, those greenhouse gas emissions that are not accounted for. The US has 742 military bases. And then each base consumes an amount of energy. Let's see. And then there's deforestation. And the military occupies the land. So that's a direct impact on biodiversity. And then if you're clearing forests, then those increase greenhouse gases from changing the land use. There's chemicals used in the military that are environmentally hazardous. They're like Agent Orange, like that was used in the Vietnam War, and even after. I think Canada used Agent Orange to do tests. And then there's like nuclear as well. Oh, it's this article says references the Vietnam War, and they use defoliants such as Agent Orange, and that destroyed 5 million acres of forest and 500,000 acres of farmland. And then if you're talking about trees help cool the immediate area, so you're reducing energy consumption during the hot summer. And then it's saying that there's a legacy that continues to affect the health of people exposed, and the land is still contaminated. And then those Afghanistan lost 95% of its forest cover. And then, yeah, militaries often don't consider protecting unique ecosystems. And there's evidence that large animals can decline up to 9% during warfare. And in the 1990s, there was the deliberate draining of Mesopotamian marshes in Iraq, which led to the loss of 90% of the ecosystem. And then people are displaced, which causes infrastructural issues in neighboring countries or within the country's own borders. Often water and food. And then there's references to Sudan and hunting wildlife populations. And then those transporting invasive species. And then there's contamination of soil, water, and air. And then those nuclear tests. I'm just going to see. Oh, okay. So I don't know if I have that much left. So, yeah, regardless of what war we were talking about, there was an environmental impact. And this is including in peacetime, there was an environmental impact. So, what can we do to lessen the impact? We should advocate for peace. Wherever we can, we should advocate for peace. If there's no war, there's less emissions. Then we should advocate for reporting of greenhouse gas emissions and additional pollution. Because if we don't know the issue, then we can't solve the issue. After that, investments into community gardens will help locally. Taking local action has benefits. Supporting mutual aid. And then we also have to consider after conflicts as well. So reforestation efforts, both here and at home, and also advocating for not using illegal weapons, especially weapons that have long-lasting environmental consequences. And then, if we reduce oil consumption, there will be less demand for oil, and we won't be as tied to global conflicts around the world. So the divestment from fossil fuels does help with the peace process. And divestment from organizations that are advocating for global conflicts. I know that this is a complex issue, and I know that many people are negatively impacted by the global conflict. The recent global conflict and other conflicts such as Sudan, the Congo, Afghanistan, and we should also pay attention to those other conflicts and look at ways to de-escalate the conflicts. There was talk about blood diamonds. So knowing where your diamonds are coming from, if you're buying an engagement ring, so that you can avoid conflicts. Knowing where minerals come from in your cell phones or electronics will also help. Because if we don't buy from countries and organizations that are profiting off of the war, there's less of a chance for conflict. Because war costs money. So reducing and reusing what we can will help in making environmental action. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your week, and I will be back with a new episode.